Hello there. Welcome to another day on Earth. We have VIP weekly hospitality tickets for the Black Desert Championship 2024 Professional Golf Association Tour FedEx Cup. They're available now at blackdesertevents.com. The full-filled event is set to take place on the 19-hole championship Tom Weiskopf designed golf course at Black Desert from October 9th through October 13th. This marks a historic return of the PGA Tour to Utah after more than 6 decades. Look how beautiful this course is.
Pretty dramatic.
That was way cool, huh?
Yeah.
I feel like my tone matched the... Oh, it's still going.
You did good.
Oh, it's still going. We have an incredible guest today. Introduce our guest, Garrett.
We're joined today by Nikki Eberhardt, who is a professor of business at Minerva University and a lot of other things. How are you doing? How's the day going?
I'm doing amazing, minus the winter weather.
Yeah, welcome to January. Wait,
it's May.
I was driving home yesterday and pointed the Mountain Thanksgiving Point area. It looked like January. It was sleet and hail and snow, and then it turned back into spring. But it is very schizophrenic.
It truly is.
Yeah.
But here we are, and we need the moisture, right, guys?
Yeah, we got 4 seasons. We're not going to get robbed on that.
That's right.
You were up to a lot. You've accomplished a lot. We'll start with some open-ended questions because you have a lot of room to run, and that will probably prompt some more stories and more questions. But let's start with kind of what you're currently doing. What led to that is, a teacher and professor at Minerva University.
You bet. So higher ed needs disruption. So we're there to disrupt higher ed. And we're out of San Francisco. We were started by a serial entrepreneur who just said it's a bit of a broken model. And if we take the latest in learning science over the last 50 years, we find that there's actually a better way to do this thing. And so we created a university out of nothing. And we have kids that hail from over 70 countries. And then they live together as cohorts in 7 global cities over 4 years.
Wow.
So we team up with some of the biggest tech giants in terms of internships and post-graduation placement. And these are really the best in class. So we're competitors with the Ivy Leagues, yet we also partner with the Ivy Leagues. So these students are able to transform what looked like a lack of opportunity prior to them being admitted to the school into a whole host of opportunities post-graduation. So it's really changing the game for not only these kids, but also to tell the world that, again, there is a better way to do this.
Yeah. And you couldn't do that in like 1986, right? Like you needed it to be in this day and age. How old is Minerva?
About 8 years.
8 years. Yeah.
Still very nascent phases.
Yeah.
Just like any other startup in the world, right?
Yeah. That would be quite the startup, right? Because you've got hundreds, sometimes thousands of years of the way higher education was done. And I took a look at like the board, lots of cool folks, but you have former governor and senator of Nebraska, right? Navy SEAL as well, Medal of Honor winner. And that's always like a good way to gauge like how serious people are taking, the project.
That's right. And you may have seen also Reed Hastings came in with a really sizable grant to fund
great.
A lot of these students just this year. So that's exciting.
So students from all over the world, and then 7 cities, locations you mentioned. Do you get to go to those occasionally?
I do. Yeah, I get to visit them on location.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I mean, you imagine the
model.
Rolodex that these students end up with, right? Having lived in all of these places.
Yeah.
That they can then turn to in professional ways upon graduation. It's really exciting. And then they're just immersed in other cultures.
Yeah.
So their understanding of how business and how computer science works in a global environment is just totally different and transformative.
Yeah. And is the curriculum heavy on business and tech, finance, or does it still have other elements of a normal college education?
We have 6 different colleges, 2 of which are computer science and then business. Most of my students are entrepreneurs, so I would say half of them are graduating with a double major, and I would say half of them are entrepreneurs have already launched their own businesses at the ages of 22 and 23, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. the curriculum for your class, do you develop that by yourself? Do you develop it with the team? Ultimately, what are your goals at the beginning of a semester to teach these kids?
Yeah. Goals are really multifaceted. We pull together curriculum as a team. But ultimately, my interest in the space is creating the next cadre of global leaders, whatever that looks like, and however they want to transform the way we tackle issues. I call them global intractable challenges. So I talk to my students about, what is the thing that keeps you up at night and gets you out of bed in the morning? Keeps you up at night because it's so disconcerting. Climate change, the refugee crisis, right? Poverty, whatever it is. But it's the same thing that gets you out of bed in the morning because you're so anxious to solve for that thing.
Yeah.
So, it's social entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
It's creating the next Davis Smiths of the world, right? Meaningful businesses that have profit in mind for sustainability, but also people and planet.
Yeah.
What do you say to an entrepreneur who wants to start a company like that? Like, is beginning, like, I want to make a difference in the world. I want to do it through capitalism. I want to do it through building a company. How do I get started?
Yeah. Excellent question. There are many different ways you can launch into that, but I would say first, be clear on your goals. Make sure you've got that North Star, that you're clear on who your audience is and what your right customer segment is. And then are you really providing solutions vis-a-vis the products and services? And if that's aligned and your motivation is aligned with that, then the tactical parts of that pretty easily fall into place. Because frankly, and I think you're doing a great job at this at Silicon Slopes, there are major networks and ecosystems around building these types of businesses. And so, it's putting the right heads together in the spaces. It's leveraging the networks in the right way. It's going after investor capital that's patient capital, that's going to look a little bit different and maybe require a bit of a longer runway. But ultimately, if you have the right people on your team coupled with the right investors, and you yourself are centered and grounded in that, it's going to thrive because the world needs you.
What about the people who sometimes they view the social entrepreneurship as a marketing tool? Like, hey, we get back, and it's not as sincere. I've actually talked to Davis a lot about this. How do you ensure that it's sincere what they're trying to do on the give back and the social entrepreneurship front?
Yeah. It's tricky, right, to disentangle that. I think from a consumer perspective, we want to ensure that it's not window dressing from the marketing team. Clearly that it's achieving what it's trying to, or at least positioning itself as achieving. So from the consumer side, I think it requires a bit of sophistication, just understanding what value add truly is and where it's just the 100 wells dug versus actually driving true impact. How is it transformative in its power? So, putting on that consumer lens, I think we need to be sophisticated about the way we vet the companies we want to align with. And then from the business perspective, the startups, I think, have the advantage in that they can start from nothing and create it however they want it to be. Whereas the corporates have a bit of a bigger challenge, right? It's often confusing. It's big. I also work for Delta Airlines, executing on our leadership program. So I get to work with many of our senior leaders. I am currently on a leave of absence with the company, but having been with Delta for nearly 10 years now, I'm realizing, what does that look like from a corporate perspective? If you were trying to be involved in climate solutions, what does that actually look like for a company in the aviation industry, right? And how can you be honest about it? And frankly, for example, our diversity, equity, and inclusion C-suite, Kyra, she's a good friend of mine. I love how she approaches her quarterly and annual reports because she's very honest about it. She's quick to speak to the short wins, but she's even clearer to speak to how far we need to go. And I think being simply honest about that and genuine in terms of we're trying to get wins, we're trying to be part of this, but it's a big, massive issue, is really what people want to hear. They want that honesty.
Yeah. What do you make of all this conversation going on in the world, and DEI has become political and all of that? Like, what do you make of that kind of like hitting the zeitgeist over the past 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. I think it was a crucial shift that had to happen. What we do with that, how we internalize that. I think it translates, you can look at it from different units of analysis. It's the individual saying, I want more diversity in my life. I value diverse perspectives and people who represent diverse perspectives, but then also taking it to our teams. What does it actually look like? Not just to have a less homogeneous team, but how do you make space and create safe space for people in those team meetings so that there is that culture of inclusiveness? And then, of course, it goes up through the organizational levels all the way up to the C-suites. But I think it's crucial, but we have to be clear that it's not just a simple buzzword, and that we're not just jumping on trend here, that it's deeper than that.
How should I treat someone who shows up to work with pink hair? Him.
It wasn't supposed to be
Him.
that color.
Are you seeing this?
Dude, I love your pink hair.
It
It matches my red
We can't let
jacket.
it go unremarked upon.
was supposed to turn out different. I'm still learning how to do it.
I feel like you're going to get bullied today.
Yeah.
We have an HR issue ahead of us.
He is not being inclusive.
Zoom in there on that.
No,
There we go.
off. This is actual bullying. And this is the HR
As
department.
he laughs.
Well, he's HR. So
Yeah, so
what's he going to do about
circles
it?
back really quick. No, it didn't go as planned. It was supposed to be a different color, but
I like it, man.
thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate
you're doing good.
Yeah.
See how I did that?
it. There you go.
He's wearing a hat. Who knows? He may have pink hair under there
we
as
don't
well.
know.
Yeah, I do. What if I did? I'm like, sorry guys.
You're just shaming me because you're ashamed.
Oh my god.
I have a question. Maybe you might not have the answer, but along those lines of what the company like Delta communicates, right? There's things that Delta probably cares about more internally, but then there's things that folks everywhere else might, and that might be like jet fuel and less pollution and things like that. And that theoretically, I'm assuming it's quite difficult, could be tracked and reported on semi-accurately. Like as far as metrics go, that one seems easy. Like we are polluting less, we're putting in R&D to find better fuels. At the end of the quarter or the year, how do you present that to the team and the public in a way that works?
In a way that works, right? I think you mentioned it first. You've got to have the clear metrics, right? That you're driving. You have to have time-bound benchmarks as well. And, those need to be SMART goals, right? What is that? That's specific, that's measurable, that's aggressive yet realistic, that's time-bound. So reporting that, I think what you report to the teams should be exactly what you report to the public as well, right? There shouldn't be misalignment there. But being measure-driven, like you said, measuring jet fuel, looking at SAF fuels, which is something that Delta is intensively seeking right now. I can't speak to that. I'm not on that team, but do know a bit about that. Among other things, right? Exploring other technologies that can transition us away from that dependence.
Yeah. Being, in the leadership of a major airline like that, or FedEx, or something that has all these logistics, it's not for the faint of heart. My goodness. It's a complicated business. Where did your love of all things like international and people from around the world come from? Because you've got a lot of education, and it's, very diverse. And obviously, what you're currently doing now has that international aspect. People are either like all in on international, or they're just like, I'll just focus on my life here. But clearly you care about the world.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I care about the world and I care about my community. And I don't see them as being an either or. Fortunately, I grew up in a fairly comfortable sort of suburban Utah community and wasn't exposed to as much diversity as we're speaking to. It was a bubble. It was a really beautiful bubble, but it was a bubble. But my parents grew up in much lower socioeconomic circumstances. And my dad in particular was just keen on never allowing us to forget that there were these other groups of people that had diverse perspectives and hadn't been dealt the hand that I had. And so we grew up spending time in the prisons, working with refugee populations, veterans. And so even, as a teenage girl, I was just highly cognizant of the fact that not everyone lived like I did.
Yeah.
And so I felt an obligation, but most importantly, an opportunity to do something about it. And so I sought as quickly as I could and left the house. I sought as many opportunities as I could to live abroad. And in so doing, it just blew my mind wide open. And I realized that there's a lot out there and a lot that needs to be done. And so, that really was my North Star. It became my exclusive focus. And I started working in communities around the world, and then quickly realized that I didn't have the answer to a lot of these macro challenges that people were facing, like the trends and the patterns I was identifying across continents. And so that's why I pursued the PhD. And then at some point I made a very interesting pivot into business, because I was part of several really powerful partnerships between the private public sectors and business. And often business was driving the innovation, but they also had money in the coffers. And that was nice. And so I made that intentional pivot. I did my MBA at Oxford in the UK. Again, totally blew my mind, because our entire emphasis was around how you have sustainable global business. My cohort was from all over the world. And I was like, this really works for me, because I haven't abandoned my life goal. Rather, I'm just finding this different lens through which to approach it. Yeah. So that's sort of like propelled me down this global path.
Very cool.
Yeah.
How do you stay optimistic?
How do I stay optimistic? Oh, Clint, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
Clint's not optimistic.
Yeah, it's kind of more, I'm asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. I'm here for you, man. Listen, the world just sucks in so many ways. I mean,
there we go.
Given that I work with
now
refugees,
you're speaking my language.
You're seeing the worst of the worst, right? The worst of humanity when everything falls apart. And when our basic notions of what civil society should look like completely implode. And that's disheartening. It's really disheartening. I won't lie. There are other challenges, thinking about the climate crisis. My work with Global Citizen, which is a huge advocacy organization to train people in their own journeys on being activists and then transforming that into digital and in-person actions, right? In all of that work, the issues themselves are really hard. But what has been heartening to me is that I've seen over and over again human beings completely go above and beyond what I expect they will do. Refugees in the middle of a crisis who have been abused and hurt and totally disenfranchised, turning around and contributing in massive ways to the world. Or, a lot of these young global citizens who are a little disaffected, and then they were COVID kids, and it's just like all the things kept happening, but they're using that disenchantment with the way the world is to make it better. And so seeing these people over and over again in my professional and personal life just give me hope. And so at the end of the day, I just feel optimistic that there are more people like that than there are people that are doing the bad things.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. You're obviously not one to shy away from challenges. We were talking a little bit before. You're writing a book on purposeful leadership. It's only 2 words, but a lot goes into that. how's it going? And what little tidbits can you share with us?
Yeah, it's going really well. It's my attempt, a marriage between personal development and global leadership. They're usually very siloed spaces. But my feeling is if we can't get right with ourselves, it's really hard to contribute to the world in the ways that we have the capacity to do. And if you don't mind, I can illustrate it with a personal experience.
Let's do it.
I think it's applicable to this audience because we're all part of this hustle culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we don't speak about it enough, but sometimes it has negative repercussions. And for a certain period of time, I was working 2 full-time gigs and had some side hustles. And I did that for over 3 years. This was not that long ago. About 3 years ago was when it ended. And I would wake up in the morning, I'd say, this is completely unsustainable. And then I'd go about my day, just hustle, go to bed, wake up, say the same thing the next morning. And I kept doing it. But at some point, I started feeling a bit hypocritical because I was teaching executives how to find life-work balance. By the way, the European colleagues say, you've got it all wrong in the U.S. Like you call it work-life balance, but it should be life-work balance.
Yeah.
That's the priority. And I would teach them about how to find that life-work balance, and yet I wasn't doing it myself. So I took a pulse check, and I realized even some people around me in my life were suffering as a result of my hustle. And so I took a step back and I started recalibrating around what it meant to be aligned, to experience daily transcendence in a spiritual way, but also just in terms of mindfulness and meditation, to just be present in the moment and to slow down and maybe peel back some of my goals. And so in that pursuit, I found a lot of happiness. And I've realized that maybe that's a message that global leaders need, that it's one part taking care of yourself so you can be there for the world, and the other part, when you are right with yourself, how do you take care of the world? Because I don't think we're here just to exist for ourselves. I think we're here to exist for a higher purpose.
Yeah.
What type of meditation do you do?
Oh, a lot of deep breathing techniques.
Oh, cool.
I keep a gratitude journal every morning and just start with my mind sort of framed around all of the amazing people and things that I'm grateful for. I also think about everything I'm grateful in my body and all of the things that are working well. Something may not be working well, but all of the other things that are sort of just in autopilot. And then I try to just take more breaks throughout the day where I just pause and think. Even the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, which is 5 things I see, 4 things I hear, 3 things I smell, 2 things I touch, and 1 thing I taste, just to sort of ground me. Yeah. What do you do?
I do the opposite of that. I do a hate journal every morning, and usually Garrett leads it. The first 4 or 5 paragraphs, he showed up.
And he wonders why he's cynical.
I take up a lot of his morning.
It's a lot of gosh, he's probably going to show up with pink hair. It's going to be so dumb. What am I even doing here?
Exactly. I know what I'm doing.
No, I've tried meditation. I don't do it. I need to start doing it again, but I've tried those, Headspace, that app. Have you tried the apps at all?
Yes, a couple, not Headspace, but I've heard great things of it.
Yeah.
So does that get you out of your hate zone, or are you still sort of just hovering in the...
No, I'm still there. Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay.
It doesn't last long. Then he's back to everything's the worst. Everything's the worst. But Clint is a student of history, and he has folks that he likes that have done really well for humankind. Are there any leaders from the dawn of creation to now that you think were admirable, that did it right? They don't have to be perfect, but that you can learn from?
That's an impossible question, but yeah. I'll do my best to answer it. Nelson Mandela, for all the obvious reasons. What I respect most is his ability to maintain internal peace when the world around him was completely catastrophic. I spent some time, alone time, at Robben Island, where he spent, I believe, 25 or 27 years in solitary confinement there, and just spent some time in his cell thinking about what my mind would have been doing all of those years, and to see how he was able to transform that, not into more hate, but into some really powerful diplomacy after he was released. And I'm very good friends with his grandson.
Oh, cool.
Kweku. He's actually done a lot of work at Sundance Film Festival. He does work with Global Citizen. He's a wonderful guy, taking in the footsteps of his grandfather in so many ways, just sort of like 2.0, you know, leveraging a lot of the digital technologies. But Nelson Mandela would be one of the highest on my list.
That's a great choice.
Great choice. Yeah. I was there in 2010, thereabouts, and one of the friends that I was there with had emailed Nelson Mandela's team in some way or form, and they replied, and he was like, "Hey, can we come and meet you?" Literally, it's just, and somebody replied, said, "Mr. Mandela read your message and would love to meet, but he's too sick." Like, it was within, I think, a year or two he passed. But the fact that he would even respond to an idiotic email like that. And my guess is if he would have been healthy and able, we could have gone and met him.
That's incredible.
Would have been amazing.
Oh,
yeah,
that's neat. That speaks volumes about him, right? Yeah. Even as an elderly, sickly man.
Yeah, just a bunch of yokels from America, but cool to get that reply. Executive coaching is another thing that I find interesting. You know, writing a book and executive coaching requires a certain amount of confidence, because you're going to be telling people your stories, or you're going to be giving advice, right? And you can't just say, "Oh, you're kind of crappy and you suck." That's a bad book and bad advice.
Is it? Oh, you took it all wrong.
With executive coaching, how do you prepare for it? What are the interactions like? And ultimately, what is the metric of success?
So this business I'm launching, Deep Impact Hub, is one part consulting and one part coaching. Training with Columbia right now, and also the Flow Research Collective. I highly suggest you check it out. It's out of San Francisco. Also very disruptive in the science of flow, the neuroscience of flow. I'm realizing that the coaching side is less consultative and more really drilling down on the emotional intelligence, the deep learning skills, and coaching people to their own conclusions, what they want. Because at the end of the day, unless they're aligned in terms of motivation with what they want, nothing's going to happen. They'll just go through the motions. But if they truly want to be transformative, if they want to get into flow and, dip into it, be more productive, peak perform better, that can apply to sports, that can apply to entrepreneurship, that could be as a C-suite in a corporation. They may want that, but it's got to be ultimately aligned to their end goals. We call them massive transformative goals. It's almost the unattainable type of goals that people have. And so it's less telling people what to do than you'd imagine. It's more helping them explore as a thought partner down that path to unlock what is inherently theirs as amazing, powerful human beings that they may have just sort of forgotten about.
Yeah. What happens when the light bulb goes off with these folks?
It's really beautiful, because it shapes not only their behaviors, but it transforms a lot of their work relationships first, but most importantly, their personal relationships. And it enables them to have sort of a different orientation to their place in life. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. One less thing to worry about.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's very
cool.
cool.
I need a coach. You guys want to be my coach?
Oh.
Only if you start a gratitude journal. No more hate
I don't
journals.
think you want me to coach you. You'll fall in a deep, 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 dark place.
It's good cop, bad cop, but then we get confused on who's supposed to be who.
Pink hair guy.
All right, here we go.
Hey, real quick, the Great Canopy, local local tech company, announced this morning that they've raised $35 million in a new funding round. It's incredible to raise something like that in this environment is really, really, really impressive. So congratulations to Canopy. You can read the full release at getcanopy.com on their blog, but
Good for
very
them.
impressive.
Because they've been at it for a while. And their CEO, Davis Bell, is cool. We had him on stage a couple of years ago, and he was joking that people confuse him with Davis Smith constantly. So I'm like, all right, I'll just introduce you as Davis Smith. And he's like, yeah, cool, go ahead. Let's do it. You got to have more sense of humor in business like he does. Made it fun, made it lighthearted.
Yeah, he's great.
But it's great to see him. It's not an insignificant amount, right? Like those headlines in 2021 were a lot more normal, but now that's a big number.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's a great number.
Yeah.
Hey, how do people follow up with you and get in touch with you if you want that?
I'd love it. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there. I also have a website, nikkieeberhardt.com, or any other social media platform. Love to connect.
Very cool. Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah,
You're
thank
so
you.
welcome.
Yeah, what a pleasure. That was great.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to feel gratitude all day.
We did it.
You
Legit?
did it.
Yeah, it'll last till tomorrow morning.
You did it. You did it. Well done. Hey, that is actually it for this week. We do not have a show tomorrow. And then on Monday, we have the great James Clark, CEO of ClearLink. So we will see everybody on Monday.
Yes, indeed.
Bye-bye.